Welcome to Transcendence Talks podcast with your host, licensed professional counselor, Kristy Crabtree. Join us as we build the bridge between psychology and spirituality and discuss psychology for the soul.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Transcendence Talks podcast. I'm here with a very special guest today, somebody that I feel really fortunate to call a friend. One of my new favorite friends, actually, Tiffany Green. And we met through a mutual friend pretty recently, and Tiffany's story truly inspired me. I would say her story is one of transformational change, courage, she has shaken up her entire life's paradigm to embrace a new one and truly to embrace herself. Her and I have had some conversations over time and getting to know each other about her story. And I'm so excited to share it with you all today. And I think what her and I really decided this was about is following those breadcrumbs that lead us back home to ourselves ultimately. That the universe tends to provide, right? And we call that intuition sometimes, but it's a journey back home, and it's a powerful one. So with that, Tiffany, welcome.
Thank you. I am just so thrilled to be here with you and to share the story of mine, because this is the first time I've ever really done it. I've shared it with a few good close friends, but never publicly. So thank you for giving me this opportunity and chance to share this, Kristy. Thank you.
Yes, you are so welcome. And I'm so glad that you are willing to share your story here with us. So just to kind of give our listeners some background, Tiffany, you left the LDS Church and completely reinvented your life as an energy worker, a Reiki practitioner. And I want to be really clear up front, because I know some of our listeners are LDS. And I think what I want to make really clear just off the bat is this isn't a story about making anything right or wrong. This is about learning, how do we come into our own true north and embrace our truth. And our truth is not a universal truth. It's not a truth that's meant for everybody. It's a truth that's meant for us and us alone. And I feel like this is a story that inspires us to figure out where does our compass lie. So that being said, Tiffany, can you tell us about your background with the church? I mean, were you raised in the church? Were you converted? Was your family involved? Like, I mean, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot. So yes, I was born and raised in the LDS Church. My family that I grew up with is devout and still are. And I grew up with a strong sense of family and a lot of beautiful values that I still hold true to this day, but that was more for my family that gave me that. And, you know, I grew up, I got married in the LDS temple to my husband, who we're going to be celebrating 25 years this month.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes. And so I met my husband there, and he was devout in living this religion that we were in. And that's kind of how we that was kind of the structure in which we then had our family too, that we brought our kids into. I have 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl, from 20 to 13 years old. I love them. And so, yeah, throughout that time, my husband and I were very devout. We had lots of what we call callings within our church. We primarily worked with a lot of the youth in the church. We had leadership callings within our congregation and within the collective congregations. And so our faith, our religion was a really big part of our lives. Yeah.
Absolutely. So your kids being raised in the church, it sounds like, I don't know if everybody listening has a clear idea on the LDS Church and maybe how it differentiates itself from other forms of Christianity. But when I think about the LDS Church, it's not just a religion, it's a lifestyle, right? I mean, it feels like when I think about that religion, everything feels really centered around it. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right with that. Especially when you are really centered in that religion.
Mhm.
And it's like what you said, it becomes part of, for me, it became a part of my identity.
Yeah.
It was a part of my community. Most of my friends were a part of that religion. And it wasn't just for us, our experience with it, it wasn't just a Sunday religion, go to church, but rather during the week, we were providing help and support within different responsibilities that we were asked to do. And so it really did encompass our entire life.
Right.
And at the same time, it gave it a lot of beautiful structure and boundaries and so many beautiful people that we love and adore still from that
Absolutely.
religion.
Because the way a ward is set up, right, is you don't just go to church with the people in your ward, they live in your neighborhood too.
Mhm.
So everybody kind of knows what's going on, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because you're this little hub, which the
Yes.
integration of that is so beautiful in so many ways. I mean, even just growing up, I mean, or not growing up for me, but where I live now, our neighborhood is a lot of the LDS community. And so our neighborhood's divided into 2 wards. And so when we moved in, I remember everybody knew, well, do you go to this ward or this ward? And if you don't go to either, then they just know
Yeah.
you're not LDS. And so so everybody kind of knows. So I mean, it is just such an integrated piece. So at what point in your history with the church did something start to not bode well, or did you start to find that first breadcrumb of maybe this isn't for me?
The thought that this isn't for me never even occurred to me until 3 years ago. So like that thought of like, this isn't right for me was just, it didn't even appear in any thought or any kind of form at all.
Wow.
And so for me, there were always things I didn't always truly believe in.
Okay.
Doctrines within the church or policies that would cause me a lot of confusion or I didn't sit well. And I was pretty good at like just taking that item and just kind of putting it up on like that shelf. Like it's there. I don't agree with it, but I'm still going to make this work.
Right.
Because I never questioned not making it work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say throughout my life, there were different things that I didn't agree with or didn't really like about the church, the doctrine, things that were said. But it was just, I'll continue doing it. And the older I got, the more I saw that there was a lot of people that were like me. My husband was also, we were very much alike in that we couldn't get on board with everything. But for us, there was so much good at the time that it was like the good outweighed the cons.
Right.
That makes sense. And so I would say the longer we're in it, the longer we kind of became the people that people would come to and say, hey, how do you make this work? How do you do this? And so for me, my identity within the church really became, I'm the person that people came to talk to. I had a couple youth come to me and I was the first one they told that they were gay or bisexual. And so I really found myself as a non-judgmental, safe place to land for other people who were struggling within the structure of the church.
Right.
And I also identified with the idea that I am the change. I am part of the change of progressing this religion because I'm doing it. So I'm going to help other people do it too. And so for me, I guess you could call those breadcrumbs, but I didn't know that. I was just doing what felt right to me.
It's only clear in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
I mean, hindsight's 2020 that maybe those were the first breadcrumbs, because what I'm hearing is at the time it was like there was no idea of even leaving. That wasn't a thought. Like we're here to be the change, we're here to be a support system. There's cognitive dissonance, and it sounds like
yeah. I didn't even know that term until after I was deciding not to practice anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh, the cognitive dissonance there was paramount. It was huge. Yeah. And with so many things.
So you mentioned one of those things was homosexuality. That was, there were some policies, right, in the church that kind of caused some suicidality among members that identified in the LGBTQ plus community. What were some of the other issues that people were, I imagine, coming to you and your husband in secrecy, right? And maybe even some shame over where you could establish safety with them?
Yeah. I mean, I was grateful to be that for them, but at the same time, it was confusing for me too. I would say some of the other things that were really difficult for me were the history of polygamy within our church, and with the founding prophet Joseph Smith, and his history was troubling to me. I would say the role of women within the church. I was always craving the connection to the divine feminine, to the sacred feminine. And what it was in the church, it was called like Heavenly Mother is how she was referred to. So I kind of think of it as the same: Heavenly Mother, the divine feminine, sacred feminine. And I was always pulled to that, and just always wondered, why don't we hear more about her or this energy? What's going on there? And I mean, I followed so many breadcrumbs. I was just starving for it. And so that was a big part of it. I would say tithing was a recent one, that and how it was being spent and used. There was a lot of things that I just really put up on the shelf. Culturally, there was a lot of things I didn't like.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time I justified, well, the doctrine's different from the church. And that finally came to the point where it's actually not. They're married.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, I'm going to change the culture at where I'm at, the grass levels within my ward and my community. But I think part of me in deciding to no longer practice Mormonism was that culture comes, in my experience, what I feel like the culture comes from top down. Right. And so this identity of like, I can change things at the grass level just diminished, was gone.
Was there a turning point for you when you realized that I'm here to be an instrument of change, but I'm not affecting change in the way that would bridge the gap for me?
Yeah, yes, there was definitely a moment, but there was a really pivotal, huge experience that even led me to think that. Okay. And it was my experience with going to an ayahuasca ceremony for 3 nights. And fully intending to stay active and participating within my religion and attending that ceremony.
So let's pause you here, because it's for people who don't know, in the LDS Church, you can't even have coffee, right? And now here we are talking to somebody who's like, I can't have coffee, hot drinks, any kind of recreational or substance whatsoever,
no
right?
drugs, right?
What a leap from that to ayahuasca ceremony.
Right.
How did that even get on your radar of consciousness?
I know. So I feel like I have to back up, because I didn't decide to stop practicing Mormonism until after my ayahuasca ceremony. And so, but that was paramount to my decision of deciding not to participate anymore. I had no idea that it would shake up my world in the most incredibly brutal and beautiful way. But to answer your question, how did I make that leap? I would say I have to give reference to COVID. COVID was a great restart for so many people, including myself and my family. And COVID was really big because we didn't attend church. Nobody could. Everything was shut down. And it kind of gave you this cocooning. And for me, it just gave me time to think and time to be, because the busyness of life was swept away. That included kids, carpooling. I was homeschooling kids at the time too, so I had a lot going on. And then church, and my responsibilities at church were basically dropped.
And how were you emotionally during that time, right? Because you went from this busyness, church callings, big church callings, raising 4 children, homeschooling 4 children, nurturing a marriage. How were you? How was Tiffany during that time?
Oh, that's such a good question. No question I avoided myself a lot during that time. You know, I've always been one to kind of keep busy, take care of myself, take care of others at that time. But that time was really difficult for me coming into COVID. You know, I hold my role as a mother and a wife in the most highest regard and top priority. And I had done that for quite a few years. And with homeschooling my kids, 2 of them had gone back to school. So I was just homeschooling 1, but it was a total of 4 years. I don't know if saying lost is the right word. I just didn't know who I was anymore outside of those 2 primary roles. And then maybe like working out, because that was my therapy, and having some having some girlfriends. So, I mean, I had a good life, but I would say I look back now and I just wasn't thriving, but was surviving and getting the things done that need to be done day to day. And there would be moments of joy and happiness. It wasn't a like dark cloud over me. But when the busyness was gone, it was like, oh gosh, yeah. Who am I? What's here? And I'm really grateful for that.
What a
I'm really,
profound question.
yeah,
Who am I? Underneath this sacred role as mother, as wife, who am I?
yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
so at the same time, my husband, um, he'd been researching psychedelics because there was all this new research coming out from Johns Hopkins about psilocybin and the work that it's doing within the therapeutic setting with anxiety, depression. MAPS is another organization that's doing really great research. And he's always been a researcher, and he kind of brings me along with what he learns about, which I'm so grateful for because we have the best conversations about it. And so we were both just really seeking a change. I mean, as far as I say, I was kind of functionally depressed. I don't want to speak for him, but he was struggling too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, there's just got to be more to life because we're not meeting our potential. Like, what's going on? We're doing all the things that we've been taught. Yeah. I, for one, in hindsight, look that I was really outsourcing everything. So it was like I was looking to everyone and everything else to kind of help guide me instead of coming into my own internal compass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so without that internal compass, I can see how I was just kind of like looking into everything and everyone to help give me information or breadcrumbs. And that's not to say some of it was helpful, but the most important piece was like, well, what's important to me? Right. What resonates with me? What's giving me that spark? So that is how I think that was the motivation then to start seeking out something that neither one of us had ever done before. Right. It had to be something radically different.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you talk about looking for that guidance, those breadcrumbs outside of me, not just the church teaches that, but society, I think as a whole, teaches that. It's always a leader outside of ourselves who has the answers, the moral compass, the way that things should be ran. And that's a pretty normative idea, I think, in our society. It almost feels radical to say, no, I'm going to come to my own conclusions to figure out and release those shoulds about happiness, joy, how I define me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to your point, Kristy, it really was like you can read all the information and everybody can tell you things. But at some point I agreed to it. I agreed to it without really thinking, does this work for me? I just did it. And it was just, I had read so many books like, okay, well, what does that look like? What does coming home to Tiffany look like? Like, how is that even done? I mean, I read so many books and I could never get there. Yeah. So I did start meditating during COVID, which turned out to be really, really beneficial. And I still meditate. So mindfulness really helped with that. And then in came ayahuasca.
Okay. Yes. So you and your husband are doing some research and you decide, okay, there's this amazing research. And I agree, it is incredible. The MAPS phase 3 studies that are coming out right now about PTSD and sometimes the resolution of it. And MAPS studies MDMA. Sometimes the resolution of PTSD in just one session, the neuroplasticity. I mean, it is really incredible research. So I could see how that would fuel curiosity and excitement.
Yeah.
For sure. But obeying these covenants, the doctrine, right? And saying, okay, we have an agreement with God to not partake in these things. How do you get or access permission from yourself, from one another, from the bishop? Like, I mean, where does that come
from? Good question. That is a big leap. Yeah, I mean, we had never drank, we had never done drugs, any of that. I think just from like the research and then watching a lot of documentaries, what really pulled, I mean, I'll speak for Dave too, because I know this, my husband, but what really pulled me was the spirituality factor and the personal growth and evolution that occurs when you come into this, people call it substance or medicine. But when you come into it with an intention, there's a shift in your life that we saw over and over again in these documentaries, in all these books I listened to, podcasts. And it was like, that's it.
Mm.
That's what I'm looking for, because I'm doing all the things it feels like. Yeah. And there's just no progression. I mean, I was so just kind of frustrated with it and with myself. Really, I was just frustrated with myself.
You said something so important right there. You said you made this distinction when people come into medicine with intention.
Yeah.
And that's what distinguishes it from fun, recreation, parties, right? When you come into it with intention, it shifts it completely from a drug of abuse with potential for abuse to sacred medicine.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah. I don't want to skip over that lightly, because that was the biggest reason that we did it. Was I really loved what the word that you used was the sacredness of it. And so many stories talk about connecting to the divine, even more so in that space, because our walls are down and we're pretty raw and pretty vulnerable. And when you go in there to really seek changes, you're going to be met with the amount of intention that you bring into it.
Yes.
And so for me, it was, there was a lot of preparation that went into this, and this decision wasn't taken lightly. My husband ended up going first with a friend. It was a local group here in Arizona. And to be able to hear about his experience and then to see the profound changes within him, I was like, okay, yeah, it's my turn. And it's crazy because it says that medicine calls to you, and it really did. My husband and I had some pretty profound experiences outside of that experience when he came home that just was undeniable. Yeah. That it was now my turn and my path to take.
So I agree. You have to be called to ayahuasca.
Yeah. It's not for everyone. And I just want to say that. Yeah. It's not for everyone. And you don't go there to have fun. If you can have beautiful, blissful moments that have been some of the most sacred moments in my entire life, but it is not one to go to recreationally or to have any type of, or to be there for fun.
And what I heard you say too is you and your husband did some work, right? You were meditating prior. And I want to know more about that preparation work to prepare you to be ready. But what I'm hearing is that you came into it from a place of reverence and ceremony.
Yeah.
And so what did that prep work entail?
So meditation was really big because it was the first time I'd really consistently practiced mindfulness. And I think that really helped me. Also, we did a combo ceremony before I went to ayahuasca. So it was
Can we talk about what that is?
Yes, I would love to.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was after my husband's ceremony. He felt called to come and do a combo ceremony. And really it's a ceremony that's been held in South America for centuries by the indigenous people down there. And it's to help bring focus and clarity, release stuck energies. And there's actually a lot of, I would say it's more anecdotal research on what it does for you, but it can help on the physical level with chronic pain, help with autoimmunity. It can help with depression, anxiety, and all sorts of things. And so what it is they take the secretion from an Amazonian tree frog and they collect that. And then what happens is you come into this ceremony with an intention. Like, for me, it was like, well, what am I wanting to release? And for me, it was like, I just want to get rid of the mind chatter. Yeah. It takes up so much space, and I could just tell it was draining me, but I didn't know how to get rid of it. And so we came into this combo ceremony, my husband and I, and a facilitator. And you fast before you go into it. And then we did it in the morning, you drink a lot of water. Because this practice is a purge. Okay. It's an energetic purge. So you're purging physically through throwing up. Okay. And I hate throwing up. I do too. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I really do not. I mean, I would be sick for days before I have to throw up. So the act of intentionally going into this was like, I'm going to purge.
Yeah.
But I
That
was,
that
go
really
ahead.
speaks to this level of like, I'm so ready for change. Because for me, I have to
Yes.
be to a level of absolute desperation to heal, to bring myself to a place where that sounds like a better alternative than my
Yeah.
daily life.
Yes. I couldn't have put it more beautifully. Yeah. I was desperate for change.
Oh, yeah.
And so we do that. And there's a couple of things we did before to prepare for us. She set the intention setting. There was beautiful Icaros playing music. But what they essentially do is they burn your skin. And typically the first time it's done, I've had it done a couple times now. But my first time it was 3 burn marks on my shoulder. It's just light burns.
Mm-hmm.
And they take the secretion from the frog and they put it on those burns and it enters your blood system within seconds.
Wow.
And so for me, I never have a panic attack, but that's what I would assume it felt like.
Mm.
And so you have like this, you totally start to heat up. Your face turns red. I actually started to swell. Heart rate increases.
Oof.
And my facilitator was like, observe yourself. So it was like removing myself and then seeing myself physically do it. And that was the first time I'd ever really been able to separate like mind from body.
Wow.
And like observing myself going through this.
Yeah.
Which that was pretty potent in of itself.
Yeah. So almost mildly dissociative.
A little bit. I mean, for some people it's not because you're just fully in your body and you're experiencing everything. But for me, it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to purge. And it was the first time I'd ever done that without being sick or like a stomach ache or something to incite that. And that in of itself was like forming a completely different relationship with that act. And really, it's like an energetic purge. So it was really like, what am I letting go of? What am I releasing? What no longer serves me? And so for me, it was just all this mind chatter, all these thoughts that aren't necessarily true, but I'm attached to them so much that it's just like all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I finished with that ceremony. And you throw up till there's bile, till you see like the bile in there. And then she did Sinanga, which are eye drops, which like could burn your eye, but it's supposed to help open your mind's eye and give clarity. Mm-hmm. And that was really beautiful. I mean, it was painful, but then I woke up, I opened my eyes and it was just like, felt like a different world. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, I didn't know exactly what I'd released. Or what the process was.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah. I mean, was it on a conscious level? Was it deeper into your unconscious?
I mean, in the moment, I was just like, okay, I can do hard things. Yeah. That really was it. It's like, okay, that was really difficult.
Yeah.
And I actually probably have a high pain threshold. Like I gave birth to all 4 of my babies doing hypnobirthing, natural birth. So I know how to work with my body. Mm-hmm. I ran marathons. So it's like, I can do hard things. Mm-hmm. And that was really difficult for me. That was like up there. And so
how long is that ceremony?
It was like 30 to 40 minutes.
Ooh, okay. That's intense.
Yeah. And so after that, I came home and it was like, okay, I'm pretty tired. I'm pretty drained. And then it was like didn't really have any like, okay, well, that was great. Really no insights about it. And then the next day, I remember I was driving to the gym. And I was just like, huh. And it was like the brain chatter gone. Wow. And all of a sudden it was just like this space was just available within like my mind, my body, my heart. And it was a completely new outlook. And I kind of say it was like my functional depression of just kind of surviving and getting things done was gone.
Wow.
Gone. And I can't explain it. I know it sounds so woo-woo. And perhaps you can call it the placebo effect. Maybe. I don't really care because it worked. I mean,
absolutely. Does it matter?
No.
In the grand scheme of things, does it matter? I know, was it lasting? I mean, that clarity, that I almost want to call it spaciousness in the mind and the heart. Was that lasting, or what are your thoughts about that?
It was. And it was then I decided to do ayahuasca. The next available time would be 2 months later. Mm-hmm. And so it was within that moment that was like, I'm ready. And there's something about doing combo where it's just like your courage is there and the clarity is there without the fear. And I
Wow.
was really grateful for that because it was like, this is the date, this is when I'm going. And then it was just like this, like myopic focus
Yeah.
on preparing for this ceremony in 2 months.
Wow. And you said too that you had been really inspired by your husband's experience of ayahuasca. I'm curious to hear
Yeah.
more nuggets of,
Yeah.
what aspects of his experience had inspired you on this same road.
You know, I saw this man that I love and adore, or I didn't see it, but just hearing about it in ceremony, face some dark that we all have. So people kind of call it your shadow, whatever it is. And I saw him have the courage and the bravery to go into the ceremony to face them and to sit with them. And to see him in that act of bravery and vulnerability come through that on the other end, and then have such moments of connection with the divine and peace in ways that he had never felt before until that instance. To see him go there and do that all for the sake of bettering himself, which then would have a ripple effect in our marriage, in our family life, and his relationships, that inspired me so much. Yeah. And to see these kind of new guideposts for him, leading him and guiding him in this life, and like what I want, and have more clarity on that, I was like, that's what I want. And I could just see the change in him. And I was like, yes, I want to meet you there. I want to meet you in that. And so I give a lot of credit to him and going first.
Yeah.
And saying like, I want to do this. And I was like, yes, I do too.
That's amazing.
Yeah. He's amazing.
You both are.
Well, we're a good team, you know, thank you. I think we're good. 25 years. I think we've done pretty well.
I think so too. Not many people can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
2 months, you've got this 2-month timeline. You're ready. You're open.
Yeah. So I would say, I remember, you know, you're going into ayahuasca with an intention. So I had to figure out what's my why. Yeah. Why am I going into this? And I mean, again, going back to like listening to podcasts, listening to other people's experience, other people's intentions, gathering all this information of like, what do I want? What do I want? What do I need? Yeah. And I remember finally just in meditation, like, okay, Tiff, like, let's get real here. What, at the core of it, at the crux of who I am, what is it? And it just came to me that I don't love myself. It's still just like, yes, there are things that I love about myself and like about myself, but not fully. Because gosh, I realize I'm so critical of myself and what I perceived as my shortcomings and challenges. And I thought if I could get one thing out of ayahuasca to really come to like loving myself, that's it. Because I feel like that's at the center of it. And then that has this ripple effect into the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
And so for the months coming into that, I read a couple books and they were really helpful. And it was funny because they would have you do exercises of like meditating and saying, I love myself. I love myself. Yeah. And it was so funny because I just remember thinking, I am literally trying to convince myself that I love myself. Like,
how often is that true though? Where
yes,
on the level of logic, yeah, I know I'm worthy. I know I'm lovable. I know I'm beautiful. I know I'm all these things. But my gosh, something in my heart just doesn't feel it.
Yes.
And it feels like a lie at times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they say the longest journey is from your head to your heart. And I'm like, that's exactly where I was.
That's exactly what that means.
Yep.
I could say it, but am I embodying that as my truth? No.
I wasn't. And I didn't even know how. I mean, I'll be honest, like I take good care of myself. Like I eat healthy. I try to maintain good relationships with my husband, my kids, family, friends. And so, I mean, I check off a lot of boxes. Yeah. But it just wasn't, I couldn't make it from here to here. So that was the preparation. And there was one exercise I did that was so beneficial. It was a practice of forgiving yourself.
Oh, tell us
and
more.
And through all the things that you feel like you need to forgive yourself for. And at first I was like, who am I to like forgive myself? Like, who says I can do that? See, like that inner critic was so strong with me. Wow. And so an act of rebellion really for me was like, yeah, you can. Because you deserve this. You're worthy of this. And you're worthy of a more heart-filled life. And that means having some self-compassion and grace on yourself. So Kristy, I literally put on like some of my favorite music, headphones, like piece of paper, and just started saying, I forgive myself for, and I literally went through chronological age of everything I could think of.
Wow.
And at the end of that, I just looked at these pages and I was like, wow, I've been holding on to a lot.
Mm-hmm.
To a lot. And so then I ceremoniously, like, I flushed it down the toilet. I like ripped it up and I was like, I'm done. I'm done holding on to this, done holding on to the energy of this, flushed it down the toilet. And then I went outside and I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed because I couldn't believe the weight that had been lifted.
Wow.
And that was about a week before ayahuasca. And I was like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm prepared. I'm still scared. I don't want to swear, but I'm so scared to do this.
Mm-hmm.
What's the other thing with Aya is it's like, if you're not scared, if you're not nervous, then I don't think you know what you're getting into.
So true, right?
Because it's a respect. You've got to go into this with so much respect. And I was willing to be like, show me whatever I need to do. Teach me, show me, please.
Mm-hmm. I have worked with a lot of people who come back from Aya ceremonies, Peru, Tucson, wherever, and they're so disintegrated. And I say the word disintegrated because they did not do the preparation work. Some of these clients that I've accumulated over the years went in, thought that Aya was going to be the magic, and they collapsed because we have this kind of like protective system, right? We have these parts of us that act almost like partitions in the brain and the mind and the heart even. And in Aya ceremony, it's like all those partitions fall away and we're left with what's true and what's real at the most vulnerable level. And what I've seen is when people don't do the meticulous preparation work that you're describing, they're flatlined. And I sometimes have to do months to years worth of work to pick up all the pieces because it just bypassed that protective system and steamrolled right to the wound, the pain. And it takes a lot of work to put them back together again.
Yeah.
And I know your story is so different, but I think your meticulous preparation is part of the reason why.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I've heard those stories too. And truthfully, that kind of was some motivation not to do it that way.
Right.
And to come in prepared. Because I just know that it can be a mirror and it can really show you what's there.
Yes.
And I had to be open and willing to do that. And that's the scary part. What am I going to see? And I think I'm going to see my impatience. I'm going to see my stubbornness. I'm going to see how I get whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it is that, but it's none of that.
So what was it?
Well, so she just shows you, I say she because ayahuasca is known as a feminine energetic spirit, grandmother ayahuasca. So I affectionately refer to her as grandmother ayahuasca. And it still feels like a relationship that I have with her, that energy, that medicine that I still maintain to this day.
Oh, you found her there.
Yeah, she helped me find me. And I think,
mother.
Yeah, and I think with any plant medicine, it's important to realize that it doesn't bring anything to you. But really, plant medicine only shows you what's already there.
Right.
And it brings that to a place that you can see it and understand it. So I don't ever think that it's bringing me something, but it's helping me see what's there.
I want to highlight that because I couldn't agree more. The medicine is not the healer. I mean, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, as cheesy as it sounds, right? But Dorothy, it was in you all along, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's something that I believe we all have this inner healer, right? This inner connection to the divine, however we name it. And it's almost as if when we open ourselves fully and completely without all of the protectors that we need from the wounds that we encounter on this earth plane, we're able to encounter that and work with that. And that's the medicine, the plant, whatever plant you choose, whatever medicine you choose, is just a catalyst to access that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I full-heartedly believe. I mean, even now as I am a Reiki practitioner, that's completely my role, is that I don't heal anyone. You're your own healer. And so I full-heartedly agree with that. but we have to be careful with the container that's set.
Yes.
And so I just do want to say, like, if you do choose to do a ceremony, you need to know who you're doing it with, how many facilitators are there, what's the setting, and then what's your mindset. So I also went into educating myself, like, does this feel safe to me? Do I feel I can be comfortable? Can I trust the people I'm going to be with? And I mean, and my husband had already kind of gone there and scouted that out for me.
Yeah, that's
I knew by his experience it was. So that's just kind of another caveat to doing any kind of plant medicine, is who and where you're doing it, and then your own mindset. You know, if you're going into this super anxious. Yeah. Anyway, that's another tangent, but.
Set and setting, right? I mean, I think with any responsible use of plant medicine, and we talk about that a lot in this therapy space too, is set and setting. Oh my gosh, and I think we could do a whole nother hour on that alone. But oh my gosh, let's get to the juicy stuff. Okay. I want to hear about, your ceremony and the transformational change. What did you find? How did you connect with that inner healer?
So I guess it was going to be 3 nights of sitting with the medicine. And and it was in some beautiful mountains here in Arizona. And it was like February-ish. It was Valentine's weekend, actually. Okay. So I was like, what better weekend to do this? Love myself than the weekend of love, right? The day of love. So I had decided to go for 3 nights because I felt like one night, from what I had researched, just wasn't quite enough to get as deep as I wanted to go, because I really wanted changes. And they offered 3 nights. And so I decided to do 3 nights, and they offer, you drink the medicine. This group, you drink the medicine at 1 a.m. And then as you're coming out of the medicine, because it lasts 4 to 6 hours or so, the beautiful part is then when you come out of the medicine, the ceremony, you're coming out of it with the sunrise. Wow. And so it really was just the most spectacular setting. But my gosh, you're raw because you're not sleeping any of those nights, which is great. There's no defenses up, right? I think that's by design sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went there. I guess 3 nights, and it's almost like a story arc for me in the most beautiful way. So, I mean, I could spend hours on my experience, but I'll just highlight a couple of the things from each night.
Yeah.
I would say the first night was really because I'd never done any substance. I didn't know ayahuasca, I should say, is a psychedelic medicine.
Right.
And so you can have open eye visuals, closed eye visuals. It then opens up your energetic body, your mind's eye, everything, your spiritual channels, emotional channels, physical channels, everything is opened up if you don't resist it. If you resist it, it gets really hard. So that's the other part. You've just got to surrender to whatever comes. Trust and surrender was my motto, and it still is.
Beautiful.
And so that first night, I first came into it, and it was the deepest relaxation I'd ever felt in my whole life. And it definitely felt like these words just started coming to me. It was like, Tiffany, this is like your reset. You need to rest deeply from the years of just kind of wearing yourself out so much of this kind of functionality that you've been living in, the survival mode. And so I just remember thinking I was so grateful. My body had never felt more heavy or relaxed in my entire life. And it was like this dream state. Wow. It was so beautiful. I'm going to include this because it comes back around. So you kind of come in and out of it. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like a dream state. And then you wake up and you're totally with it. You can talk with people. And I remember thinking, okay, I want another dose, which it's a tea. It's a brew that you drink. And so I went up and I was waiting to get this other drink. And this group, they do music, live music.
Oh, wow.
And it is phenomenal. I mean, they have guitars, they have drums, hand pans, but it's all like Icaros from the jungle. That's also guides you in the journey. So there's purpose to that. And there was a particular facilitator, and he had just been singing all night. And whatever it was, it just brought up some stuff for me where I was like, this guy is dominating the airspace and I'm over it. And I started to get really nauseous. It was the first time I got nauseous. And I was like, he's up here. There's so many other women with guitars. Nobody's playing. He's dominating all of it. And I don't like it. And my body just started reacting to it. Yeah. And I was like, what's going on? And I remember kind of some stuff with church started to creep in.
Oh, what was that connection?
So the connection for me was I had always kind of struggled with the women's role in leadership. within our religion. There are great men everywhere, and including the Mormon Church. I mean, my husband's one of them. So it's not that I get mad at the men, but I didn't like the system that was set up. I just thought women were kind of my experience. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I was limited in what I could share and do within my participation. And so for me, that was the link, like, oh, he's dominating, he's conducting. I didn't like it. And so I was like, ooh, okay, something's coming through here. And it was like, okay, but this is just a nice gentleman who has the best intentions of just kind of helping our nervous systems relax with music. So it was like, have some grace and compassion for him, and also the men in the church.
Oh, so you're wrestling with this.
Yeah.
There's kind of this paradox here of he's dominating things.
Yes.
But I should have grace, and I should whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I say should, and I hate like shooting on myself. I always say that now. That's been a big lesson. But I mean, the better word, like I would want to have grace and compassion for men, because they're also in a system that maybe they don't like either.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what and so thankfully a female singer started to sing, and it was just like, whew, I started to calm. I was like, okay, thank you. So I had some resolution on that, but then I was just kind of swept away, went back to my mat and was swept away in another vision. That's when I got so queasy. And this is where, like, without even knowing it, my nervous system was being worked on. So for years, I had never let myself sit with discomfort or dis-ease. And for Aya, it can make you queasy, but not everybody. And it can make you throw up.
Yeah.
Out both ends. I hadn't thrown up either, but it was just like sitting there.
Yeah.
And it was just this realization, Kristy, that came to me, like my voice, grandmother ayahuasca, the divine, I don't know. And it was like, now it's the time to practice sitting with what you've been avoiding.
Wow.
And so it was body and breath work for 3 or 4 hours of like something coming up, not feeling good, and breathing through it, accepting it, and then letting it flow through my body. And I had no guidance on this. I just was doing what felt right. And then the queasiness would dissipate.
Okay.
And then I would think about something else and contracted. Oh, what have I not been thinking about? I mean, there was a lot. I'm not going to go into all that.
Right.
But it was like a nervous system, like training me to like regulate and how to sit with discomfort.
So that is such an important point. And I want to talk about that in the context of all psychedelic medicines and the difference between a drug and why do we not call these drugs versus sacred medicine? And it's exactly what you are talking about, which is a drug, a recreational drug of abuse takes you away from yourself, creates a sense of numb, so we can push things away and reduce our own distress tolerance. Where when we're talking about plant medicine, psychedelic medicine, whatever it might be, and we're using it with this kind of intentionality and reverence, it's exactly what you're talking about, which is why I get so excited about it, because it is allowing us to look at the things we've been avoiding, to look inward, to look at ourselves, and it brings us closer to ourselves, not away from ourselves, not creating further disconnect. And so here you are in Aya's ceremony, recognizing, oh my gosh, through busyness, routine, monotony, whatever, there's been this disconnect. Yeah. And I'm learning how to increase my distress tolerance, to re-engage with my nervous system and to feel so deeply. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, beautifully said. That's exactly what it was. I didn't know it at the time. I was just trying to get through it. Yeah, right.
Like, how can I get through this? And I was like, oh, this is working. And then some insights. But yeah, I mean, even though as a therapist, that's what was going on, which is incredible.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was coming through and giving me, I didn't know that I needed that tool. And so that's what's so intuitive about these plant medicines when done with intention, is it meets you where you're at, and it helps support that. I mean, so like, that was just the first night. So a lot of it was like reconnecting, surrendering control, feeling what's there. And I mean, the end of every morning, it's 7:30, I'd call my husband and report to him. And I was like, I can't go back. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. Yep. And he was like, Tiff, you can do this. And he gave me the advice that I had given him when he called the first morning and was like, I can't go back. And I just said, this is your ego keeping you safe. thinking it's keeping you safe. You can do this, push through. And so he kindly returned the advice. And I was like, damn it. Okay, you're right. And I knew, I'm like, I got to do this. I got to see it through. So the next day is just all about processing. So second night, it's just like, what is the second night? And that second night was really beautiful. I went into it with just curiosity. I mean, I was nervous, but it was like, okay, I kind of want to get to the meat of it. Like first night, that's great, but like love myself. Like,
wow. So
love
the
myself.
first night, the lesson was invaluable to the process, because the first night was, what does surrender even mean?
Yeah.
And learning that the pain is not in the pain is in resisting.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
you are able to come into night two curious. And when we're curious, when we're open, when we're compassionate, that's a sign to me that I'm connected with self energy, with source, not coming from an ego state.
Yeah.
And so you have these qualities coming into night two.
Yeah. That I don't really, I mean, you're saying it so beautifully, but I didn't really know that's what was going on.
Yeah.
You
Oh
know?
no, of course not.
Yeah. And that first night just set the foundation of like knowing that I can do this physically, emotionally, mentally. So the second night just was so beautiful. It started off with like visions of me and my husband. And this is where like the closed eye visuals really came through. And it was like, I saw this link of him and I like linked together and these like gold links, and it had January, because we're both January, and it had this beautiful picture of an anatomical heart, which he had drawn me a Valentine's once with an anatomical heart. And so it was just like, and it was like soulmates, like forever.
Yeah.
And so I loved that. And then I had visions of my kids and really profound, beautiful messages towards them and how I can support and love them better along with my husband. And I was just crying with tears of gratitude, like, yes, okay, I will. And so I remember thinking, okay, if I can love myself as much as I love my husband and my kids, I would love that for myself. And so immediately I swept up into another vision where I saw my reproductive system.
Wow.
And when I say that, I'm laying on the ground and it's just, my eyes are closed, but it feels like it's like right here. And I see like my ovaries and my fallopian tubes and my uterus. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? And I'm having a conversation with grandmother ayahuasca in my head.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know what this is. And she said, this is your sacred womb. Oh. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? And she said, honor it. And I said, well, how do I honor it? She said, appreciate it. And so I sat there with it, and my stomach, like my womb area, just started heating up. And I saw these visions of, it was the funniest thing, of like my uterus, my fallopian tubes, my ovaries, my cervix, everything was like little like balloons, like in the Macy's Day Thanksgiving parade. And they were like floating around being celebrated, and there was confetti. And I just had this like gratitude, just viscerally, cellularly wash over my entire body of like, I'm so grateful for my body and what it does for me. And it's grown and housed 4 beautiful babies. Yeah. And it was a profound experience of like, just grateful for this instrument, this temple that I've been gifted.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. And so it was a lot. And I was like, okay, I got up and I went to the bathroom, and there's a mirror in there. And I went in the mirror and I just said, I looked in the mirror and I said, I'm trying to connect with you. I'm trying. And I started to cry, even though I just had this profound, I was still, no, I wasn't there. And my face separated into 2. And then it came back into 1. I saw myself age, and I thought, oh, that's so sweet. Like, I look so sweet as a grandma. And this voice said, I'm going to introduce you. Ooh, I'm introducing you tonight. Oh. And she said, we're going to take it slow tonight, which I was so grateful for, because you hear a lot of stories of her. It's so fast and overwhelming. And I had just gone into it. Please make it slow and in a way I can understand, so that I can embody that. Yeah. So went to my mat, fell back into the kind of another dream state, and came to not came to, but just kind of woke up and it was like, okay, it's time to do hape, which is like a Amazonian, it's the ashes of like tobacco, sacred tobacco with other ashes. And it's like an instrument like this. It's blown up your nose. And I knew one of the facilitators there because she had done combo on me. So she came that night and I was so grateful to have her there. And she said, okay, if you get stuck, come to me. And it was just this voice, go, go, go. And I knew, Kristy, I was like, oh, this is it. This is the work. And I ceremoniously, I sat up, my body just sat up automatically, and I put my hair back in a ponytail. I'm not kidding you.
You're ready.
I put a ponytail, pushed my sleeves up, and was like, let's go. Oh. This is it. And it was like a tractor beam pulling me to her. I can't even describe it. I go over there and I tell her, I'm like, it's time. And she goes, I know. So I sit down and she administers it to me. And it comes up my nose and I feel like my left ear just crack open. And my skull just, I can feel all the swirling energy. And I was like, what is happening to me? She goes, you're feeling your energies. And it felt so overwhelming that the only way I could get out was like sobbing. And I fell into her lap and I just started sobbing. And she held me, and the facilitators are also musicians, started singing. Wow. And I finally was like, okay, I'm ready for the next nostril. And I had let go of so much, but this second nostril, it was like she blew it. And all of a sudden I could feel the energy coming out of my fingertips is the only way I could describe it. And in my mind, I could see like this lightning coming out. And I told her, what is happening? She said, you're releasing. And all of a sudden I was like, I could feel all these layers, Kristy, just like coming off of me. And I was like, what is this? And in my mind, it was like who I should be, who I'm supposed to be, what people have told me to be, who I've agreed to be without even like thinking about it. And I could just feel the layers coming off my body. It was, I remember telling her, I'm like, this is so insane. Yeah. And then I said, and actually I'd never said the F word to this point. And I said, no, ever in my entire life. I was like, no, this, and because it's a podcast, I just said, no, this is the most effing sane thing ever. And I could just feel this lightness around me. I can't even describe what it was, but in that moment, I felt like new. I felt so much lighter.
Can I ask you this? You felt new, but was there a familiarity in what you felt too? Was it new and familiar, or was it unfamiliar to you?
It felt familiar and also unfamiliar. Unfamiliar in like the shedding. That's what felt unfamiliar. But then getting back to me, because I do remember they did sing this song, and it was a song about I had lost my knowing, and coming back to it as this was going on. And I was like, that's it. Yeah. I have lost my knowing for years. And then coming back to the sacred feminine was part of the song. And I was like, that's it. I mean, talk about synchronicity. I mean, the timing of this was just so beautifully, divinely orchestrated. Wow. And so that was my second night.
Oh my gosh, that was just like you. So it's almost like
I think I should speed this up. Sorry.
This is great. Like grandmother Aya is so the intelligence, right? And
yes.
The wisdom and the medicine, where she was like, first I'm going to teach you about surrender. And I know you're not ready to honor your heart and your the most pure essence of who you are. So we're going to start with your body, because I know you love your children and I know you can relate to that. And that's going to open you up to the shedding of the layers. Yeah. To reveal who knows what night 3, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. That was exactly it. Because I was like, okay, I just felt such peace, Kristy, that I'd never felt in my entire life. Wow. Such peace and bliss that I can't even describe of it, encompassing in and around me. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want this to end. I don't want to forget. And grandmother Ayahuasca was like, you won't. And I mean, at the end of that night, we come up with the sunset. Again, I'm still having to breathe. There was still nausea and it was like still discomfort, but I was like, I can do this. Yeah. And so, third night, I come into it and I immediately start having visions laying on the mat of snakes above my head. And I didn't know the significance of snakes till after a ceremony, which like, that's my ring care, but
Oh, yeah.
The snakes started coming in towards my head, and they came in through my crown, and then they came all the way into my stomach and my uterus. And I know that would be like, that is freaking scary. But it wasn't. It felt so like natural, like they're coming to do a job. I
Well,
can't
there's that
describe it.
Kundalini
Yeah.
metaphysical kind of, connection to the snake, right? Which
Yes.
is in Eastern tradition and philosophy, an awakening of the chakras,
Yeah.
right? From the crown
Mhm.
down to uh, the root
The root.
chakra. It
Yeah.
opens up your spirituality, your intuition, right? It's like an initiation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, looking back on hindsight, that's what that 3-night ceremony was. It was a
Mhm.
complete Kundalini awakening and activating.
Yeah.
And so they came into my room, and I just felt like this heating up. And it was like, I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, it came to me like, all that stuff that you've been breathing through for 2 nights, this is it.
Mm.
And sheer terror shot through my body, because I was like, I thought I'd been releasing this all along. It's like, well, you have.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, then what do I have to do? And I was like, trust.
Mm.
Everything that you've been releasing, but you are gathering, and you are going to release it tonight.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I am so scared. But I trusted, because I know what is on the other end of that. I've learned that through the discomfort, and the fear on the other end of it is complete peace.
What a
And
lesson.
bliss.
If that's all you took away from it, which obviously you didn't,
Yeah.
but if that was all you got, my gosh, I can't even tell you how many years of therapy it takes for people to just get that.
Well, and they say that ayahuasca can be like years of therapy in 3 nights. And it, coming on the other end of it, it certainly felt that way,
I believe it.
because you're experiencing it. It's so experiential.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I sat there, and Kristy, I could just feel all my energies like revving and humming and going really, really, really fast. And I started to panic. And I was like, hey, do I get hape again? It was like, no. And it was like, hey, I want to go to this other facilitator. She does all the music. I was like, but I didn't want to take away from that job.
Yeah.
And it was like analysis paralysis, which was like my whole life. And it was like, just make a damn decision.
Yeah.
So I chose the woman, the facilitator, who's the musician. She came and she sat with me, and I developed a relationship with her over the 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just breathing. Couldn't figure out what was going on. It was building, heart increasing. Finally, she was there with me so long that the gentleman who had been the musician from the first night, who I gotten so annoyed by, who shall remain nameless, I'm just kidding, came over to the facilitator and said, we need you to play your music. And he was like, I'll sit with her. And the irony was not lost on me. This man who I'd been so upset with and annoyed with was now here to support me in what was feeling like one of my most difficult feelings of being stuck.
Wow.
And so I was like, that was really profound and beautiful for me.
Mm-hmm.
So he helped guide me. Eventually went outside, and I could feel like I had gone into a squat position, like when I gave birth to my babies, and I would kind of roll. And I went outside, and I just started doing that automatically. And it finally hit me like, oh, you've been breathing like you're in labor.
Yeah.
You've been on all fours like you're in labor. And it was like, you're going to release this by giving birth to it.
Ooh.
And I was like, okay, yeah, but at the end game of that, I give birth to a baby. It's like, how do I know what to release? Like,
Right.
I can feel my body when I need to start pushing and transitioning and shaking. It was like, trust your body.
Yeah.
You know what to do. Like, you have the inner guidance. I mean, I wrote this down in my journal. Like, you know what, your body knows what to do. This has been passed down evolutionary wise from woman to woman. You know what to do. And I could feel like the generations of women behind me.
Ooh.
And so as I sat with it, I just started to breathe. And I started to shake. And it was like, I just let myself shake. And then all of a sudden it was, I mean, this was probably over 30 minutes. It was like release. And I fell back on my back, and I just started sobbing, and I could feel that it was gone. Wow. Heart rate still, breathing still, just stillness. And I just thought, I just gave birth to the most beautiful release of my life. Mm-hmm. And as I sat there looking up at the stars, it was brilliant. The stars were sparkling, and I could just feel the peace and the divine all around me. And it was in that moment I couldn't call it Heavenly Father, I couldn't call it Heavenly Mother. I couldn't call it God, Goddess. It was too big for words and language.
Mm.
And it just completely enveloped me. And I just remember thinking, I have just birthed myself into a new existence. And I mean, to have those 3 nights of what I look back on is like a shedding and coming into a new skin, a death and a rebirth. I mean, I didn't even want to leave that space, but I was anxious to get back to my husband and kids.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, more went through that night of having women, feeling with the women of my generations, of my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my mother, all surrounding me, supporting me. I mean, the rest of the night was just complete, harmoniously oneness with this energy.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm leaving things out, but that was the most important thing, is that I just feel like I am new consciousness.
Yeah.
And then I went back into the bathroom to meet myself. So I
Oh.
went back into that bathroom to look at that mirror. And I remember walking there and I said, I'm excited. I'm excited to meet her. And I looked in that mirror and I saw me. And then I just saw my face turn fuzzy.
Mm.
And it came back and I looked at myself and then my hands were on the sink and I was just staring at it. And there were just no words for what I saw.
Wow.
It was just pure like consciousness, light, energy. And I love Ram Dass, and that his words came to me and it was, I am loving awareness. And I kept saying that over again. I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. And with every time I said it, I could feel it, feeling my entire energetic body and giving awareness to what was there. And then it just turned to, I am, I am, I am. And so to say that this ceremony was life-changing is putting it lightly.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, yeah, 3 years later, it was February of 2021. It still holds such a sacred space and appreciation and respect in my heart for, I'll just say it, for myself and being courageous enough to take these steps.
Yes.
To do this. And so from there, I've had to follow, it's set a really beautiful blueprint of now following those cosmic breadcrumbs of what feels right. And growing does feel uncomfortable, but go through it anyway, because on the other end of it, it's worth it.
So that's the integration for you. I mean, that's how you took the knowledge, gosh, not just of who you are, but how to honor who you are in the most beautiful way and integrate it into your life, is not looking outside of yourself, but trusting that you know.
Yep.
And trusting that you have the answers.
Yep.
And learning how to feel into those things.
Yeah, because that was a process that I wasn't really familiar with, to be honest, before that. And so that's exactly what this experience was for me. And I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
Because then coming out of that experience, because as important as that ceremony is, the most important part that I've learned and still continue to learn is the integration of it.
Yes.
So what does this experience mean for me the next day at 10 a.m. or at 3 o'clock in the carpool line?
Right.
Or so how do I take these experiences and now apply it into my life to be a better person?
I'd like to hear more about that, because you're talking about something that is just so incredibly sacred, and realizing that so much of life is mundane. How do we integrate the two into daily experiences that are meaningful? What does that look like?
Yeah, finding the magic in the ordinary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I still have to take time to do that.
Yeah.
For me, that has really looked like, first of all, being present to the moments, being present in my own life, and looking for the magic. Yeah. Because it is all around us and it's in us. So for me, it was first finding the magic in me. I never knew was there. So spending intentional time with myself every day, meditation, Reiki or energy work, whatever that looks like, dancing, by myself to music that I love, my dance class, whatever, it's spending time with my family. So it's really finding the magic first in me and then seeing it outside and seeing it in everyone else.
So, I mean, after this ceremony, it took your life on a complete 180. So
Yeah. And I
you were
had no idea it would.
you were still an active member of
Yes.
the church.
Yeah. And no intention of leaving. I mean, I
Okay.
would tell people in ceremony that I'm Mormon. They're like, wow,
Yeah.
you're here. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, and to their credit, they're very much, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And no one was like, oh, like, are you sure? Can you do that? Like, everybody was so accepting of me being there. Everybody held that with love and respect.
Yeah.
And no one was like, well, you're going to for sure leave after this. It was very respectful, but yeah, I had no intention of leaving or changing how yeah.
Yeah. So like before the medicine ceremony, it's like, okay, I can have this cognitive dissonance and that's something I can live with, but something shifted where you are now embodied and
Yeah.
there's no more compartmentalization. And
No.
so you just can't. It feels like fundamentally you're incapable because that is not truth. And so how did that unfold to where you are a member of the church to, okay, I'm fully embodied and I just can't.
Yeah. I want to say I gave it a valiant effort.
Okay.
A for effort, because I really thought I can do both, because that's my role. Remember, like,
Yes.
I am kind of that progressive nuanced, and I do things differently.
Yeah.
And so I really did try. I will say, I mean, after that experience, I went to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I had to start therapy to kind of just help me integrate this. What does this all mean for me? Like, I need some structure to this now, because it's like, here you go, Tiff. Here you go. And it's like, okay, what do I do with this? So therapy helped me a lot.
Yeah.
And then because it was COVID, we still weren't in church. And I remember the first time we returned back to church, I went there and I found the beauty that I could.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm surrounded by beautiful people who are here to serve. Like, service is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And we're serving one another. And so I was able to, not able, but I saw the beauty that was there.
Mm-hmm.
I also saw what no longer resonated with me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the divide started happening.
Okay.
And so I would say outside of that, it was hard because I thought, I just did something that I'm not supposed to. It's against the word of wisdom.
Yeah.
Like, we're not supposed to ever do that. But yeah, it just gave me the most profound, divine experience, exquisitely divine experience of my entire life, mm-hmm. compared to 43 years of devout Mormonism.
Wow.
And so it was hard because that experience just couldn't compete with all the years that I had put into Mormonism, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. especially the spirituality and being connected to myself and the divine. Yeah. And so I just started to see the chasms that were starting to open up. Mm-hmm. And just from what was being said and hearing things differently from a different lens from mm-hmm. leaders within our church or the Mormon apostles or Mormon leadership, no longer resonating with me anymore. It was as if looking at it I felt like so much of what I was hearing was like, I've got to be worthy. I've got to be earning this. I've got to be checking the check boxes at all times if I want to attain this level of spirituality or salvation or in, celestial kingdom. And I just thought, that's just always in me. I don't know that I need to earn that anymore. It's just there. I am. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't sitting well with me anymore. So at an intuitive level, and in a heart level, it just wasn't feeling right for me. Yeah. I felt very confined within that space. It felt more fearful to me, more than love-based. And other people can disagree with me, and I get that because we all have our own experiences. But I'm speaking through my lens. Yes. And so eventually, I kept going to church, and it just was like, this is getting harder and harder. Meanwhile, my husband knows what's going on. I'm sharing with him everything that's going on. My kids don't, because I don't want to share this from a place of exploration, obviously. Yeah. We're the family that goes to church every Sunday, mm-hmm. and we have the callings. Like, we're a big part of our ward. Yeah. We're counted on. Yeah. And so that's in the back of my mind too. Eventually, I just started to see that like I can't separate culture and doctrine anymore. All these things I put on the bookshelf, I can't put them on the bookshelf anymore.
Yeah.
Like I've got to explore that. And I put those up there because I was scared. And I know when I go through what's scared on the other end of that. So eventually it just was like, I asked my husband, okay, this does not feel right to me anymore, intuitively in my heart. But if I'm going to leave this religion, which that was a huge moment of even saying, is this religion for me anymore?
Right.
I had never, ever even thought that or let myself think that.
Yeah.
So once I let myself think that and had a near panic attack, I was like, I need to know it all.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband's done all the research for years and he has told me some things, but he's remained devout and active in spite of knowing all these things of the church history.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if I'm going to leave, I want 100% justified in the heart and in the mind.
Yes.
And it was a deep dive into that. And it wasn't long before I couldn't continue.
Wow. So it's like the body, the heart led.
Yeah.
But the mind needed that awareness.
Yeah.
To justify that this was true.
Yeah. Which was still another learning lesson, like, instead of just trusting it. I've met a lot of people who are like, it just didn't feel right. I'm like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Part of my growth was that I had to justify it and I'm okay with that. But
absolutely. Yeah. But it's so integrated. I mean, because now you know it on every level of your being. And that's such a big decision. I mean, because your kids are invested and raised in the church. And I'm sure there's a lot of fear around what are people that I love and care for going to think? How's it going to impact them? I mean, on every level.
Oh, absolutely. All of that. Mm-hmm. Because being Mormon was part of my identity. And I was seeing that my identity is bigger than being Mormon. Yeah. And now I'm seeing that I don't really want to identify as being Mormon anymore. Mm-hmm. And so, and then what's my biggest fear was my 4 kids. Yeah. Because they go every Sunday. How are they going to do this? Mm-hmm. The next fear was just like my parents, my siblings, my extended family, and then the people within our ward, our congregation. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon it was like, I don't care anymore. Like, I don't want to hurt you, but I cannot keep you comfortable while I'm uncomfortable. And knowing this truth for myself, I can no longer put what I'm worried about, what they think, above what feels right to me.
Sounds like self-love.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So it was really scary. Mm-hmm. But it was like a magnet, Kristy, and like following these breadcrumbs of like, keep trusting. Because as I do it, there's more liberation and freedom and peace. Mm. And so, it was probably 2 months after my ayahuasca ceremony that I was like, I can no longer continue. Wow. I told my husband that, and he was like, whoa, slow the brakes. Yeah. He's like, are you sure? And I'm like, I can't, but if you want to continue and if you want to take the kids, I get it, because it's not my place to tell you what's right or wrong within this journey. Yeah. And so he did his own work around it. And it wasn't too long after that he was like, I'm with you. Wow. And that was a big moment, because I was fully ready for him to keep practicing if that's what it took, because I love him and our kids. And I was really grateful that we could be on the same page, because that's not the case for a lot of mixed marriages. Okay. So the next step that I was so scared about was telling our kids. Yeah. And it took like a couple months of telling them. We were away staying with family in Utah, as we do every year for the summer. And so when we do that, we don't really go to churches often. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that we didn't really have to tell them. And I didn't want to. I was still figuring it out in a way. Yeah. I was still doing my own work and processing it. And so I kind of wanted to be at a place where I was more sure before I shared it with them. But when we did share it with them, we told our older 2 boys first. Mm-hmm. They were 17 and 15 at the time. And they were relieved. I mean, our oldest son kind of made a joke about it. I won't say what the joke was, but it was pretty funny. Yeah. But he was relieved because it was time for him to serve a mission.
Were you surprised?
No. I really wasn't. Deep down, I really wasn't. I think part of my nervousness was like, okay, we've just had this big structure in place.
Yeah.
for our family. So now how do we intentionally feel it?
Right.
So I should say in preparation, Dave and I were really intentional with like, okay, how are we going to continue as a family? How do we keep this closeness? How do we fill this space of like 2 hours every Sunday
Yeah.
that was spent doing that? How do we do that? How do we create service opportunities for our family?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of that was kind of rebuilding our foundation as a family and parents.
Yeah.
So that we could come to our kids prepared in a way.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And how to feel this structure, because that was, that was like our family too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so back to the older two, they were relieved. And they were like, they just said, we knew it was important to you guys. And that's just what we did as a family.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, we're actually kind of relieved and happy that we don't have to. And we told them why. We met them where they were for like the reasons. And we said, if you want to continue practicing, we'll support you.
Yeah.
We had led off with that. If it's important to you, we support you in that.
Yeah.
And then same thing with our two younger two. I think they were 12 and 10 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we told them and they didn't really care. But we said the same thing to them. If you want to keep going because your friends are there, we'll go.
Yeah.
Because it was important to us to know that they had a choice. Now, I know like what 12 and 10-year-olds going to want to go to 2 hours of church. Like we know that. And so anybody's gonna be like, well, what kid would choose? And we knew that. But it was important to know that they at least had the choice, that we'd support that. And so they had questions and we answered them. And we said, it's important that our families are still participating.
Yeah.
And we respect that because that's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the respect that they've shown to us and us telling them that we're no longer participating, we return the respect to them for participating.
Right.
And so, and so since then, our kids have been really good with it. We've developed new traditions.
Yeah.
Sundays can be like, eating out for breakfast, or we try to spend intentional time together on Sundays. And I feel like we've always been intentional parents, but now it's even more so.
What a beautiful message to give to your kids too, that they've had to embody and truly live is you get to honor your truth and you get to honor what's real for you. And I also fully expect that you do that for other people.
Yeah.
Whether we see eye to eye or not.
It's reciprocal.
Yeah.
It's
right.
got to be reciprocal. If we want the respect and love, then that's what we want to offer that in turn.
Right.
And so that's kind of how it's always been for us.
I love that. And so you guys leave the church, you do it as a family, you guys are all in the same page, and you have a full-blown career shift. You had been home with your kids, wife and mom, worked in the home, and so, but not outside the home, right? Mm-mm. And so tell me about how you came into Reiki and energy work.
Yeah. So it was through my therapist. She actually knew how to work with energy.
Okay.
And she was like, you are so sensitive to energy. Mm. And she had held up tuning forks and said, tell me which tuning fork, which chakra this resonates with. And I was able to pick out like, this is the heart chakra, the solar plexus. So after Aya, I had so much energy coursing through my body. I'd already started studying energy work in the chakras because I was like, how do I work with this? Yeah. So my therapist was like, you should go try a Reiki session. And I was like, Reiki? Like, what is that? And she was like, it's a modality of energy work. Mm-hmm. I have someone you can go to. And so I did that that was like 5 or 6 months later. I had my first Reiki session. Mm-hmm. So I was already familiar with my energy and how to work with it. But then to have someone else work with it was profoundly different. And that first session was mind-blowing. And it brought kind of a similar peace to me that Aya did.
Wow.
And I could feel the energy coursing through my body and I knew where it was. And I had messages around what was there.
Messages for yourself. So you were able to feel it from that energy, something significant.
Yeah. Because I had already started in practicing with energy work and meditating, I'd already sat with like, oh, something's arising in my heart. What's there? So I'd already started connecting my intuition with my body. Yeah. And the energy. And so when I had this session done, it was just on next level because it was someone else shifting and moving my energy. And I was in partnership with it. Mm-hmm. And the session was so profound. And she's my Reiki mentor now, a good friend. I'm so grateful for her because she's like, you should learn about Reiki and do self Reiki. and get like certified, because you're already so naturally attuned to it.
Yeah.
And so I was so grateful for Reiki, because this whole time since I was deconstructing my life, beliefs, everything, who I am, and at the same time reconstructing through learning about energy and chakras. So then to be led to Reiki, which then gave me this beautiful scaffolding, because Reiki's ancient Japanese energy modality that works with the energy in and around your body to help align your energy centers.
Yeah.
And with Reiki, it just gives you a beautiful structure of like
Right.
how to kind of do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Learn how to do it and then make it your own. That's what I
Right.
love about it.
So there's
So I
a
was
science
already,
and there's an art.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so it just really resonated with me. And it was the most beautiful gift, because I'm still deconstructing beliefs and religion and who I am, and then also bringing in more inner knowing of who I am.
You did this in such warp speed. It's even hard for me to wrap my mind around it.
It blows my mind. I mean, for a year and a half, I was just on like, Kristy, it was like a magnet.
Wow.
That was like pulling my heart to like do this, this. And I mean, I'm not going to say it was easy.
No.
It was not easy. I've had some of my highest highs and my lowest lows, but all worth it.
Wow.
All worth it to come back to me, to remember who I am and what's there. And that's what all those breadcrumbs were. It was like, oh, hey, here, Tiff, follow this. You're actually really good at this. You just don't remember.
You just don't remember.
You just don't remember.
Yeah.
And so
now, go ahead.
No, I just say like the last 3 years has just been a complete remembering.
Yeah.
It's been remembering, oh, that's right, because this feels familiar. This feels good.
Yeah. And you just have to honor that. Just honor what feels right, what feels true.
Yeah. And sometimes what feels right is really difficult to do.
The truth is always inconvenient.
Yeah.
Upsetting. I'm sure your family of origin, right? Dave's family, your children, the ward, your roles within the church, all that is very inconvenient.
Yeah.
But you said it so well. It also came with the reward of an internal sense of freedom and liberation. And that's priceless.
Yeah.
And that self-love. And so now you've turned that into a practice, right? Where you do Reiki and intuitive sessions on other people to help them find their way.
Yes. I love it. It just really blossomed. As soon as I knew how to do it for me, it was like, I've got to share this with other people. Yeah. And fully with the intention of helping people get in touch with their own self. Wow. And so that's the crux of, I mean, if you want to call it my business, but my practice is really helping people connect to themselves and connect to that energy of who they are, connecting to that internal wisdom for men and women. I see both. And also to know that you're your own self-healer.
Yes.
So I'm here to assist you, but you're the one really doing all the work. Always. So my work is in helping people guide themselves back to themselves in this remembering. Yep.
And so what does a session with you look like?
So a session with me would be, it's about an hour and a half. And before you come, I ask that you come with an intention. And you don't have to share it with me, but what's your why? Why do you want to come today? And that could be for a myriad of reasons. I feel stuck. I need clarity. I just need to relax. I just need a break. I just want to feel good, whatever it is. Come to the session with an intention and just to, again, trust and surrender and receive. And so I love to leave people through some breath work to begin with, and then a guided grounding meditation just to kind of help calm their nerves. A lot of people are a little bit nervous when they come. And then I do sound healing with crystal bowls and chimes, Tibetan bowls. And then I start my energy session. And which is like light touch. Okay. Towards the body and above the body, because I'm able to feel the energy that's there. Yeah. So I can feel like if there's an excessive amount of energy and what maybe needs to be shifted or pulled, or if it's deficient, I'm able to bring energy into the energetic body, into the auric field. And the beautiful gift, because when I did Reiki, I was always like, what am I feeling here? I started to develop intuitive abilities within like seeing things, hearing things, feeling things. just within my own self.
Yeah.
And so then the practice of Reiki is I first have to know who I am and what I feel before I can feel other people. So there was a lot of foundational work that was done on my end before I could ever dream of working with anybody else's energy.
Absolutely.
Because I have to know what's mine and what's theirs and how to separate that.
Right.
And so, yeah, so a session with me then as I'm working with the energy, I'm also getting intuitive messages of like from your soul. I call them soul messages of what's going on in this chakra, this energy center, this part of your body. What are you holding on to? What's being asked to be released? What's this beautiful gift and genius that you have that's being asked to be used more and come into more? So it's not just releasing, but it's also like what needs to be witnessed and honored.
And you're getting these intuitive hits about your client. And so we were talking about witnessing and the power of witnessing and how healing that is, because I know in my therapy practice,
Yeah.
I think that's the healing agent, is when I am connected to that space where all my protectors are out of the way, my heart is open to my client, and they feel safe to bring me whatever it is that they have to bring that day. And they know there's no judgment, and they're truly just witnessed and understood wherever they are that day. And so it feels so validating, right? Like that there's these things happening for them either in their subconscious or unconscious minds. And you're able to feel and experience that and put words to it for them and help almost bring it from the heart into the head to integrate some of those experiences that they might be having.
Yeah. And I think, and I echo everything you just said because it's very similar. And I think part of my intention when I come into a ceremony is to not have any judgments. And really the intention is to come into that space with love and support. And I feel like when people come to me, they feel that.
Yeah.
And because of that, then they feel safe and they feel trusted, and they're really able to open themselves up to the potential of that session and the energy that's there and the changes and the shifts that can happen.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like my Reiki is a little bit different in that I'm very intentional with what you just said. I really want to support, honor, and witness whatever happens in that session.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we talk about what came through because I write it all down. It's usually about a page and a half that comes through for people.
Yeah.
And I can see that as like symbolic stories or movies in my head. I can hear things, or it's just straight up telling me what to write down. And so after the session, it's important to me that we talk about what their experience was, because that's just as important. And then also what was energetically done for them. And then what were the soul messages that came through for them.
Wow. That is so comprehensive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's about an hour and a half of doing that, because I don't want people to be like, oh, that was great. Or maybe it was okay. And now what? What do I do with it? And so it's almost as if I bring my own experiences with Aya into my sessions, and then the integration aspect. Because I'm not interested in just sending people on their way and like, well, what do I do now?
Right.
And so, especially when they get these really beautiful messages, a lot of people already are thinking that they know what they need to do, but they don't know how to act on it. So when that message comes through for them, and it's something they've already been feeling and thinking, I love it because it's the most powerfully potent, empowering validation that, that is your intuition.
Yes.
You know, that feeling that you felt in your body, and you keep having these little like whispers without the anxiousness. We don't want anxiousness because that's not your intuition. But you kind of these neutral thoughts you keep having, and you feel it. Yeah, guess what? This that came through for you is validation. That's your intuition. That's your inner compass, your inner guidance and wisdom. Follow it. Beautiful. And that's my favorite thing of all the sessions, is leaving my clients empowered and knowing that they have a strong intuition.
Oh, that's so amazing. So you found your North Star, you teach others how to find theirs. And I keep hearing the word coherence for some reason. It feels like,
I love that. Yeah.
I know, right? Like I feel like you're learning how to live in coherence, body, mind, spirit, and teaching others to do the same.
Yes.
So you are here in Arizona as well. If somebody wanted to work with you, have a session, get some intuitive guidance, how would they find you?
There's a couple ways. So one is through my website. My business is called Radiant Shadow Healing. because so much of my work has been putting light on my shadow, and our shadows are radiant.
Yeah.
There is no
Wow.
exiling those parts of ourselves that we don't like, but it's in the accepting it that we bring it into the light.
Oh,
And
I
so,
love that.
yeah, so that's why that name has such significance for me. So
Mhm.
radiantshadowhealing.com is, I
Mhm.
have my website, and you can contact me through that. My phone number is on there also. And Instagram. My handle is Radiant Shadow Healing there. And so you can send
Beautiful.
me a direct message through Instagram or through my website.
Awesome. I'm excited
Yeah,
to come in and get a session with you
I
too.
know. We've been
I'm so
talking about
ready.
that. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. We got to do it. I
Yeah.
would love to. It'd be my honor.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tiffany, this was incredible. Your story, it's just so beautiful and it's so layered. And your story is your story, right? It's like these are
Mhm.
things that you just can't make up, but your way of describing how you returned home to you is so poignant, and I will forever be grateful that you chose to share it
Mhm.
here. So thank you from the bottom of my
Thank
heart.
you. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for that, Kristy. I fully received that. And honestly, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my story.
Mhm.
I've been limited in who I've shared it with. And just because of the sacredness of it. And it's only been 3 years.
Yeah.
And this just felt like it was like the universe and you were just like, hey, Tiff, it's time to share. And it feels so good being able to share this. If this helps anyone or if anyone can relate to anything I've said today, that would make it all worth it. So thank you for giving me this divine opportunity to share it with you and for your friendship too, because I just adore you.
Me too. Right back at you, sister.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
All right, listeners, thank you so much. And we will talk to you soon.